Hello everyone, welcome to another Java video. In this video, we're going to be doing something called a Unit 1 overview. I'll be highlighting some key important concepts that we're going to be learning in Unit 1. And for some more of the complicated topic related with Unit 1, I will be making a future video on them, such as arithmetic and solution planning, which is called IPO model. And there are also plenty of solution videos surrounding those topics as well, which you can check out on my playlist on my YouTube channel. Today, what we're going to try to do is really look at all these topics here. How to output data into a terminal by using system.out.println, how to get data from our terminal to our code by using scanner and nextline. And we're going to be looking at the three main data type that we will use the most often in this course, called integer, double, and string. And we're going to be looking at converting string type data into an integer or a double, which are all important skills that we need to learn and master before we go into Unit 2. Before we get started, one thing I do ask is that in your Replit, you change some settings. So number one, you're going to change your indentation character from tabs to spaces and sizes to 4. This just means that anytime in your code you press tab, it's going to auto translate a tab click on your keyboard to 4 individual spaces, which is really nice to have instead of you clicking spaces 4 times, because indentations being 4 spaces is an industry standard in programming. Next, we're going to go down here. We're going to be turning off AI code completion. We're going to be turning off AI advanced models, and we're going to be turning off code intelligence. The reason is, as beginner programmers, it's more imperative for us that we actually try to memorize and remember these key concepts that we're learning, rather than relying on an AI to kind of autofill and autocorrect our behavior, so that we implement good practices and good behaviors in your code. All right. What you see right here is something called a boilerplate. So boilerplate is like a template of how we can start our code fresh. And majority of the time we will be coding in this. So when we start a Replit, inside our file explorer, we'll always have a main.java. And when we create and click this run button, we will be only executing the main.java file, and it will be only compiling the main.java file. And that's just how Replit works. And later on, if you do get more advanced in your programming career, yes, it's true that you'll create more than one Java file. But at this stage of your beginning of your programming career, we're only going to manipulate main.java. And if you have to create more programs, it is recommended that you just create multiple REPLs rather than having multiple files on a single Replit. Okay, so you just make sure that our class is called main, and that we're going to be running this main function that exists within your class called main. And once again, I want you to turn all your AI's stuff off and set your indentation size to 4 and indentation character to spaces. And within this program, what we're going to do is the following. We're going to code a program that gets your first name and last name and gets your age, and kind of just output those details from our program. Okay, so what we've done so far is that we have imported scanner. Scanner is really important because we need to import that functionality so that our Java program knows how to grab data from our console. Okay, because if we can put data into the console by using system.out.println, we should also try to get typed data. That's the data that we type out with our keyboard from the console and bring it back to our code and maybe store it in our variable. Okay, so another thing that we will learn today is use of variables. Alrighty, so here we go. We're going to be working on this code right now. I have my scanners imported. I've created a scanner variable. So sc is a scanner variable. This allows us to use any functionality that a scanner would have, and we just needed a reference point to say that, hey, I have this scanner and I wanted to use it to do scanner related stuff. Okay, and therefore now we're going to create our first name getter. we are going to need to store our first name in some sort of a container. We call those variables. Variables should have a label and they should have a data type associated with them. And anytime we're working with text space that contains alphabetical characters or numeric characters all in combination, we want to create a string data type. Okay, and then we're going to say that this is first. Our variable is called first, and we're going to be setting it assigned to. We're using the equal symbol to say that, oh, we have created a variable and it's going to be assigned to the value to the right. And in programming, it's always in that scenario. We're always going to have the data type to the left, the name of the variable to the left of the equal sign, and we're going to have the value to it for the right side. And we're going to say that we're going to get the result of next line occurring. And next line is a power that a scanner object has. We created a scanner variable, and we can call that a scanner object. We can say that this SC now has a power to run this method. And what this does, it just grabs string-based data from our console and assigns it to the variable that it's attached to. But this program's a little silly. It doesn't give any information of what we should be inputting. So we're going to be outputting that message, enter your first name. And now let's compile this and run. Right now, what we're doing is turning all this into binary code that our program can understand, and it's going to ask for enter your first name. This line 19 is being executed, having that message being printed, a string message be printed, and then we can say that string first is equal to whatever we input, and now our program is waiting for our input. So if I wrote down Mr., that value will be stored as a string. So one thing you want to note is that dot next line will always grab its values from terminal as a string. Terminal or the console as a string. So that's something to note for your programming. Now, you don't always have to use an next line to set a value to a variable. We can also give explicit values as well. We can say string last is equal to park. So we do stuff like this when we want to initialize a value for our variable right away. And since it's a variable, that's a container, we can remove that value and change it with something else or modify it as we go. But it is still a textual data, so we want to use string. We use string for typed variables for textual data. Okay. Anything that contains A to Z along with 0 and 9 together, like so. Awesome. Now I asked the program to enter the first name by having this instruction being outputted to our console. We outputted this message, and we get your first name by assigning whatever we type here to belong to this variable called first. So now let's actually output our message. We can say that system that out.println your name is. We're going to use a plus symbol here. We're going to do first. We're going to put a space in between and last. And this allows us to say that this string is going to be combined with all these values. So if I were to run this code again, it's going to ask me to enter my first name, which I'm going to be storing in this variable called first. So I'm going to say Mr. And it's going to output your name is Mr. Park, right? So it outputted this string message, then added on the value of Mr. Then we added on the value of a space, and then we added on the value of Park. Here, we did not get a custom value for our last name, so our last name currently is always going to be Park. But we can also change that explicitly as well. So we can say that our last can be updated to like Parker. And then if I were to copy this again, like so, and run my code. Oh, any variable that you have created with and stated the data type, you don't have to restate the data type, so you can actually get rid of that. All right, we can just say that this variable already exists, so we can say that, hey, on line 27 now, this variable is going to be now updated with Park to the value of Parker. So there was an error, we fixed it, and we can say that here for this run, my first name is going to be Miss, and we're going to get on their first output here, it's going to say your name is Miss Park. But here we can say that your name is Miss Parker because we have actually manipulated and changed the actual value of what was being stored in a variable called last. Okay. And we will actually revisit strings way later on in the future to do cool things with strings, which we call string manipulation, where we can do more intricate problems with that. Awesome. So we have learned how to create variables and assign them to either, how do I close this? Okay. We have learned how to create variables. We have learned how to use .nextLine to grab textual data from our console so that we can bring it back to a variable here. So now let's try to output age. We have data types where we can have integers, doubles, and whatnot, and let's actually work with an integer because your age is not a textual data, but more as a numeric data. So let's see how we can handle that. Handling age. So we can say that we have a variable called int age, and we can say the following. We're gonna initialize it to 0. So this is called variable initialization, giving it a value when you don't know it. Right, so that's a common thing you can do as a programmer when you just like initialize it to a value so that we can have a variable created and update it later on, which we're going to do right now. We can ask the code to say system that println. We're going to use the println functions to output an instruction set, like a message saying that, oh, you should be entering your age now. You can say enter your age. And you want to end your line with a semicolon. And then we can say our age is going to be equal to age sc.nextLine. Now, the problem with this code is that sc.nextLine returns or grabs it as a string rather than an integer. So what we are going to do is use this code called integer parse int to say that whatever we grab here, we're going to actually put it into this converting function, which is going to convert it as a integer. So this code right here helps to convert strings to an integer. Okay, and then we can say system.out.println your age is, and we're going to add on the age value here. And we're going to see some cool things. So let's run our code. We're going to enter our first name to be Mr. It's going to say Mr. Park and Mr. Parker because we changed our value of our last name here. And now we're at this stage here. We have created an age variable. And then now we're saying, hey, we want to enter your age. And now it's waiting on this code to finish because next line can't finish until we give data here so that it can execute the next line of code. And I'm going to say that my age is 32. And what it does, it actually converts this textual data that I typed into 32 as an integer by us having to do integer.parseInt. And we were able to join a string with an integer here because the system.out.println is able to handle a string output. And whenever you join a string with another integer, it is going to auto translate it back to a string. Okay. Alrighty. So I want to show you what happens if I didn't put integer.parseInt. So in this line of code, if I were to turn it off by setting it as a comment, and if I were to write that integer age is equal to sc.nextLine, whereas declared age as an integer variable. So let's run this code. Okay, and we're going to get an error. So if you see right here, it didn't even run our code. It says there's a compile error, basically. It is saying incompatible types. A string cannot be set to an integer because next.line grabs all of our data as a string. So if you need to grab integer data with that .nextLine, what I do recommend is that you use integer.parseInt. Okay. Now there are some people who have done coding before who are asking or thinking to themselves, well, you can't use .nextInt. my recommendation is that if you're going to start mixing next line and next int, you're going to get weird behaviors that you do not intend. So the best way to do it is to just read everything as a string and then convert those data whenever you need to. All right, everyone. So we just did a little rundown of all these. Yes, we didn't use a double, but it works the same way as us creating a double variable, just like an integer variable, and converting it from a string to a double is very similar. So I'm confident that you'll be able to translate the skills that you've learned in terms of how to convert an integer to from a string to an integer, just like how you can apply that to a double as well. Okay, so this was our little code. And these are all the skills that you have to know. How to use a scanner where you have to import it, create a scanner object, and close it at the end. And anytime you need to use the methods that it has, the functionality that it has, you just have to refer to the object's name and call upon its superpowers, which we call methods. Okay, system.out.println prints or outputs text or string onto your console for us to grab data that you type out from the console and bring it back and store it in a variable. You're going to need to use sc.nextLine. If you're grabbing integer or double based data, you're going to need to do either a double.parse double or an integer parse int to convert those data into a double or integer. Okay, so let's run this code again, making sure that we have this part turned off and everything's working as expected. So if I write Jasper, my name is Jasper Park to Jasper Parker, and if I were to enter my age of 23, we're going to get age is 23. Okay, so here we are able to perfectly get that string data and then convert it into an integer. Then it's been assigned to a variable called age. Okay, and anytime you have variables, you can add them in by using the plus operator within your system.out.println to have all those data being nicely printed. Okay, so that was your Unit 1 overview. I just want to say thank you, and as always, stay classy.